I should go, Emma whispered, her hand already on the doorknob, but her feet refusing to move. The rain outside pattered against the windows, creating a rhythm that matched her heartbeat. Behind her, David stood in the hallway of his modest home, his shoulders slumped with the weight of unspoken words. "If you stay tonight," he said, his voice barely audible, "I might lose the strength I've been holding for years." Their eyes met in the reflection of the glass door panel, and in that moment, both knew everything was about to change. If you're touched by stories of second chances and the courage it takes to open your heart again, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more emotional journeys that remind us what it means to be human. 3 years earlier, David Parker had become a single father overnight. The call came at 2:17 a.m., the kind that shatters your world into before and after. His wife Melissa's car had hydroplaned on a rain-slicked highway, much like tonight. The police officer's voice had been kind but firm. "I'm sorry, sir. She didn't make it." David remembered sinking to his knees in the hallway, the same spot where he now stood watching Emma hesitate at his door. Back then, his daughter Lily had been just 4 years old, sleeping peacefully upstairs, unaware that her mother would never come home again. The following months had been a blur of funeral arrangements, grief counseling, and learning to do everything alone, from braiding Lily's hair to explaining why mommy wasn't coming back. David had packed away his own grief, storing it somewhere deep inside while he focused on being both mother and father to his daughter. "Daddy, why are you sad all the time?" Lily had asked one night, her small hand patting his cheek. "I'm not sad when I'm with you, pumpkin," he'd answered, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. But he was sad. The kind of sadness that becomes a constant companion, that reshapes who you are until you can't remember what it felt like before. David had built walls around his heart, not to keep love out, but to keep himself together for Lily's sake. Emma Reynolds had come into their lives like a summer breeze, unexpected and refreshing. As Lily's first-grade teacher, she had noticed the little girl's quiet demeanor and the drawings she made during free time, always of 3 people, a tall man, a small girl, and a woman with wings. "Mr. Parker," Emma had said during their first parent-teacher conference, "Lily is incredibly bright, but I'm concerned about how withdrawn she can be." David had nodded, exhaustion evident in the dark circles under his eyes. "We're doing our best," he'd said simply. Emma had leaned forward then, her eyes kind but determined. "I'd like to help, if you'll let me." What had started as weekly check-ins about Lily's progress had gradually evolved into coffee meetings that lasted longer than necessary. Emma had a way of drawing out Lily's smile and, surprisingly, David's too. She recommended books about grief for children, brought over dinner on nights when David looked particularly tired, and never pushed for more than he could give. "You're good with her," David had commented one evening as they watched Lily playing in the backyard. "She makes it easy," Emma had replied. "She's so much like you, strong, even when she's hurting." David had looked away then, uncomfortable with being seen so clearly. Now, a year after that first meeting, Emma stood at his door, caught between staying and going. They had just returned from a school fundraiser where Lily had performed in her first play. The 7-year-old was sleeping at her grandmother's house for the night, leaving David and Emma alone for the first time. The evening had been filled with easy conversation and laughter, real laughter that David had forgotten he was capable of. They had talked about everything and nothing, and for hours, he hadn't thought about his grief at all. It felt like betrayal. "You don't have to go," David said now, surprising himself. "The rain is getting worse." Emma turned from the door, her expression a mixture of hope and caution. "David, I'm not good at this," he interrupted, running a hand through his hair. "I haven't let anyone close since Melissa. I don't know if I remember how." Emma took a step toward him. "No one's asking you to forget her. Aren't they, though?" His voice cracked. "Every time I smile or laugh or think about moving forward, it feels like I'm leaving her behind." "That's not how love works," Emma said softly. "It expands. It doesn't replace." David looked down at his hands, hands that had held his wife's as she took her last breath in the hospital, hands that had wiped his daughter's tears, hands that now ached to reach out to the woman standing before him. "Lily asked me last week if you were going to be her new mommy," he admitted. Emma's breath caught. "What did you tell her?" "I told her that no one could ever replace her mom, but that doesn't mean there isn't room in our lives for more love." David's eyes met Emma's. "I didn't realize until I said it that maybe I was trying to convince myself too." The rain continued its steady rhythm as Emma moved closer, close enough that David could smell the light floral scent of her perfume. "I've been holding myself together for so long," he whispered. "For Lily. For my sanity. If you stay tonight, I'm afraid I'll fall apart." Emma reached out, her fingers gently touching his. "Maybe falling apart isn't the worst thing. Maybe it's how we put ourselves back together differently." David looked at their hands, his calloused from the woodworking he did to clear his mind, hers soft but strong from shaping young minds. Different, but somehow fitting together. "I'm scared," he admitted, the words barely audible. "So am I," Emma replied. "But I'm more scared of walking away from this, from you and Lily, than I am of staying." David felt something shift inside him, like ice breaking on a frozen river. The grief was still there, it would always be there, but alongside it now was something warm and hopeful. "Stay," he said, his voice steadier now. "Not because of the rain. Stay because I want you to." Emma's smile was like sunrise after the longest night. "I've been waiting for you to ask." The next morning, David woke to the unfamiliar sound of someone else breathing beside him. Not unfamiliar because it was Emma, but because it had been so long since he'd allowed himself this kind of closeness. They had talked until the early hours, sharing stories of their lives, their fears, their hopes. When exhaustion had finally claimed them, they had fallen asleep hand in hand, fully clothed on top of his bed covers. David watched Emma sleeping peacefully, her auburn hair spread across his pillow. The guilt he had expected to feel was there, but it was quieter now, more like an acknowledgement than an accusation. "I'll always love you," he whispered, not to Emma but to Melissa's memory. "But I think it's time to start living again." As if in response, the morning sun broke through the clouds, casting a warm glow across the room. David allowed himself to believe it was a sign. When Emma stirred and opened her eyes, the first thing she saw was David's genuine smile, not the forced one he wore for Lily's benefit, but one that reached his eyes. "Good morning," she murmured, momentarily uncertain. "Good morning," he replied, and leaned forward to place a gentle kiss on her forehead. "No regrets?" Emma shook her head. "None." Later that day, when they picked up Lily from her grandmother's house, the little girl took one look at them standing side by side and broke into a wide grin. "Did Miss Reynolds have a sleepover?" she asked innocently. David knelt down to his daughter's level. "Yes, she did. The rain was very heavy last night." Lily nodded sagely. "That's good. You don't like to be alone when it rains. You get sad because it reminds you of Mommy." David exchanged a surprised glance with Emma. Children saw more than adults gave them credit for. "You're right, Pumpkin. I do get sad sometimes. But last night, I wasn't sad." Lily considered this, her small face serious. "Does that mean you're not sad about Mommy anymore?" David pulled his daughter into a hug. "I'll always miss Mommy. But being sad all the time isn't what she would want for us. I think she'd want us to be happy again." "With Miss Reynolds?" Lily asked, peering over his shoulder at Emma. David looked back at Emma, who was watching them with tears in her eyes. "Would that be okay with you?" Lily thought for a moment, then nodded. "Mommy would like Miss Reynolds. She's nice and she makes good cookies and she helps me with my reading." Emma laughed softly, wiping away a tear. "Those are very important qualities." "The most important," David agreed, standing and reaching for Emma's hand. The following months weren't without challenges. David still had moments of overwhelming guilt. Lily still had nights when she cried for her mother. Emma still had times when she felt like an intruder in their grief. But they talked through it all. David learned that moving forward didn't mean forgetting. Lily learned that loving Emma didn't diminish her love for her mother. Emma learned that patience was more than waiting, it was understanding. On the anniversary of Melissa's death, the three of them visited her grave together. David placed flowers while Lily arranged small stones in the shape of a heart. Emma stood back, giving them space, until Lily beckoned her forward. "Mommy, this is Miss Emma," the little girl said to the headstone. "She takes care of us when you can't. I hope that's okay." David put his arm around Emma's shoulders as she knelt beside Lily. "It's more than okay," he said, his voice steady. "It's what love does. It grows to include more people, not less." 1 year after that rainy night when Emma had almost left, David found himself standing in the same hallway, watching her by the door again. But this time, she wasn't leaving. This time, she was hanging up her coat, having just moved the last of her belongings into their home. "What are you thinking about?" Emma asked, noticing his thoughtful expression. David smiled, the kind of smile that had once been rare but now came easily. "I was thinking about strength." "What about it?" "I told you once that if you stayed, I might lose the strength I'd been holding onto for years." He moved closer, taking her hands in his. "I was wrong. I didn't lose anything. I gained the strength to live fully again, not just survive." Emma squeezed his hands. "We all did." From upstairs came the sound of Lily's footsteps as she raced down to join them. "Is it time for the movie yet?" she called. "I picked The Lion King." "Again?" David groaned playfully. "It's a classic, Daddy," Lily insisted, sliding into the hallway in her socks. "Can't argue with that logic," Emma laughed, scooping Lily up for a hug. As they settled onto the couch together, David looked at the two of them, his daughter and the woman who had helped heal their broken family. The grief was still there, a part of who they were, but it no longer defined them. "I love you both," he said simply. Lily snuggled closer. "We know, Daddy." Emma's eyes met his over Lily's head. "And we love you. All of you, even the parts that will always belong to Melissa." David nodded, feeling a peace he hadn't thought possible 3 years ago. The strength he had been so afraid of losing had transformed into something more powerful, the courage to love again, completely and without reservation. Outside, rain began to fall, but this time, the sound brought no sadness. Instead, it was a reminder that after every storm, life continues, different, perhaps, but no less beautiful for having weathered the tempest. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us continue sharing stories that remind us all of the resilience of the human spirit and the healing power of love. Remember, it's never too late for a second chance at happiness, and sometimes the bravest thing we can do is simply open our door and let someone in. As the years passed, the Parker household evolved into something neither David nor Emma could have predicted that rainy night. Their family grew when Emma gave birth to twins, a boy and a girl they named James and Melissa, the latter a tribute that felt right to all of them. Lily, now 12, took her role as big sister with a seriousness that made David's heart swell with pride. "She looks just like her," Lily whispered one evening, watching baby Melissa sleep in her crib. "I mean, not exactly, but something in her eyes." David nodded, understanding completely. "Your mom would have loved being a grandmother." "She is one," Lily said with the simple certainty of a child. "Just not in the way we can see." These moments of wisdom from his daughter never failed to amaze David. She had grown into a thoughtful, compassionate young person who carried her mother's memory not as a burden but as a gift, a part of her identity that made her stronger rather than fragile. Emma had officially adopted Lily on her 10th birthday, a decision they had discussed extensively as a family. The ceremony had been small but significant, with Lily holding both their hands as the judge made it official. "This doesn't change anything about your mom," Emma had assured Lily beforehand. "I'm not replacing her. I'm just adding my name to the list of people who love you more than anything." Lily had considered this with the thoughtfulness that characterized her. "I know. Mom gave me life. You helped Dad give me a life worth living again. That's different but equally important." David had turned away then, overcome by emotion at his daughter's insight. On their 5th wedding anniversary, David surprised Emma with a handcrafted wooden jewelry box. Inside was a locket containing a family photo, all 5 of them plus a small, faded picture of Melissa tucked into a corner of the frame. "Our whole family," David explained as Emma examined it with tears in her eyes. "It's perfect," she whispered. "Absolutely perfect." That night, after the children were asleep, they sat on the porch swing, watching the stars emerge one by one. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I'd left that night?" Emma asked, her head resting on his shoulder. David was quiet for a moment, considering. "I think I would have regretted it for the rest of my life. Not just losing you, but losing the chance to discover who I could become with you." "I almost did leave," Emma admitted. "I had my keys in my hand. I was so afraid of being a temporary solution to your loneliness." David turned to look at her, the moonlight silvering her features. "You were never temporary. You were the permanent reminder that life continues, even when we think it can't." When Lily turned 16, David took her driving for the first time. His hands shook as he handed her the keys to the family car. "Dad, you're being ridiculous," Lily laughed. "I've had lessons. I'm not going to crash." The word hung between them, unintentionally cruel. David swallowed hard. "I know, pumpkin. Just humor your old man's nerves." As they drove slowly around empty parking lots and quiet suburban streets, David found himself relaxing. Lily was a careful driver, methodical and attentive, traits she'd inherited from her mother. "Mom would be proud of you," he said as they pulled back into their driveway. Lily turned off the ignition and looked at him. "She'd be proud of you too, Dad. For everything." David knew she wasn't just talking about letting her drive. She meant the journey they'd taken together, from broken and grieving to whole again, different but complete. On the 10th anniversary of that rainy night, David and Emma returned to the spot in the hallway where everything had changed. The house was quiet, with Lily away at college and the twins at a sleepover with friends. 10 years, Emma marveled. "Sometimes it feels like yesterday, and sometimes it feels like we've always been together." David took her hands, just as he had done countless times over the years. "I used to think strength meant holding everything inside, carrying it all alone. You taught me that real strength is knowing when to let go." Emma smiled, the lines around her eyes deepening, lines earned from a decade of laughter and tears shared together. "And you taught me that love isn't a limited resource. It multiplies with every person we bring into our hearts." They stood there in comfortable silence, surrounded by the evidence of their life together, family photos covering the walls, children's artwork framed alongside professional pieces, the slight scuff marks on the hardwood floor from years of living fully in their home. "If I could go back and tell myself one thing that night," David said thoughtfully, "I'd say that losing strength isn't always a bad thing. Sometimes it's just making room for a different kind of strength to take its place." Emma leaned forward, resting her forehead against his. "And what would you tell me?" "I'd tell you that staying was the bravest thing you ever did. And that I'm grateful for it every single day." Outside, rain began to fall, a gentle, nurturing spring shower rather than the torrential downpour of that night long ago. They listened to it together, no longer hearing echoes of loss but instead the rhythm of renewal, of life continuing its eternal cycle. "I love you," David whispered, the words as fresh and true as the first time he'd said them. "I love you too," Emma replied. "All of you, past, present, and future." And in that moment, Standing in the same spot where he had once feared falling apart, David realized that he had indeed lost the strength he'd been holding onto for years, the strength it took to remain isolated, to keep his heart walled off from possibility. In its place had grown something far more powerful, the strength to live with his whole heart, to embrace joy alongside sorrow, to build a life that honored the past while fully inhabiting the present. It wasn't the ending he had once imagined for himself. It was better, richer and more complex, woven with threads of both grief and joy, loss and discovery. A tapestry that told the story not just of survival, but of revival. As they moved from the hallway to the living room, hand in hand, David glanced at the family portrait hanging above the fireplace, all of them together, their faces alight with genuine happiness. Beside it hung a smaller photo of Melissa, forever young, forever a part of them. "Thank you," he said, not just to Emma but to the universe that had brought them together, to the twist of fate that had turned tragedy into the foundation for a different kind of happiness than he had ever imagined possible. Outside, the rain continued to fall, nourishing the earth, washing everything clean, making way for new growth. Inside, wrapped in the warmth of a love that had been strong enough to weather every storm, David and Emma settled onto the couch, content in the knowledge that whatever came next, they would face it together, not despite their past, but because of it. And that, David realized, was the greatest strength of all. If this story resonated with you, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Your support allows us to continue sharing stories that explore the depth of human resilience and the transformative power of love. Remember that healing isn't about erasing the past, it's about building a future that honors it while embracing new possibilities. Sometimes the most beautiful chapters of our lives begin exactly when we think our story is over.